So you're applying for a project manager position. Here's some step-by-step tips to get you prepared for the interview. Hello everyone, I'm Sudhi and I'm your coach for all project management related questions and challenges. So let's start with your resume. Just make sure that it's not a long resume. Everything that you need to say and everything that an interviewer is going to be looking for is within 1 to 3 pages. And the way that it is set up, you want to make sure that you have the most relevant information and the most recent experience at the very top. Make sure to have done some research on the company and what they're looking for. Learn about the culture, learn about what's important to them, and make sure to tailor your resume to that position. Although there might be many project manager positions out there, different companies are looking for different things depending on their culture. Some may be more technical, some may be more on the business side. Although the background and the process of a project management is pretty applicable to all different levels, the way that you answer or articulate your resume could gear more towards one or the other that might catch the interviewer's attention right away. When you look at the job description of the project management position that you're applying for, you're going to be able to pick up on a lot of key phrases or key skills that they're looking for. That would be a great indicator that's going to help you tailor your resume to that position. So first and foremost, make sure that there are absolutely no typos on your resume. That is the easiest way for your resume, regardless of how much skills and experience you have on it, to be overlooked and passed up. That's the number one thing that leaves a bad impression with the interviewer that does not want to look any further on that resume. Formatting is a critical element that catches the eye of the interviewer before actually even going through all your skills. The resume should be easy to read for the interviewer. The interviewer is probably going through hundreds of resumes. The easier you make the resume on the eyes and clear and concise, the better chance they'll have compared to all the other resumes. Make sure that the formatting is neat. Most importantly, it's consistent. You're starting each bullet with a verb. Continue to do so throughout the resume. Make sure everything that you put on it is relevant. Another thing to keep in mind as you're going through, you're probably describing all the different projects that you've worked on. Make sure not to get too detailed into what the project does versus what your role on that project was. The interviewer is more interested in how did you manage the project regardless of what that project was. I know a lot of tips out there tell you to quantify your project, what type of benefit the project provided to the organization. But reality is, it's not the project that they're trying to hire. They're trying to hire you. Now, for those of you who are just getting started and don't have enough experience to add to your resume, check out my previous video that gives you some tips on where to start. Now on to interview. You want to make sure to start on time. That means not too early and not too late. Chances are you're going to be scheduled for either a phone or video interview or an on-site interview. For any one of those, you want to make sure to be prepared and arrive on time. Now, being on time means not too early and not too late. What is too early? About 15 minutes or more is probably too early. Usually for the phone interviews, when you dial in, meeting organizer gets notified when you join the call, and most probably they have other meetings or other things that they're doing about 15 or 20 minutes in advance of your interview. So you don't want to seem too anxious and way too early as if you don't know what time the interview is starting. If you're going to an on-site interview, make sure that you have accounted for the distance, for traffic, once you even get there, where you need to park, and whether you need to find the building or the suite that you're going to be interviewing at. So make sure to allot enough time for that. But by the time that you get to the receptionist, if they're going to call the person to come and get you, make sure it's about 5 minutes within your interview time and no more than that. Once you do get started with your interview, one of the typical questions is, tell me about yourself. What they're really looking for is for you to talk them through your resume. So start at the top of your resume with the most relevant experience. Talk them through the project, specifically your role on the project. Talk about maybe a few challenges and how you overcame it. Talk about the size of the project, meaning the size of the team that you manage. Talk about the budget, how long the project took, whether it came under or over budget, time, or some references to the triple constraint triangle. If you don't know what that is, watch my future videos. We'll talk more about that. As you're talking through your interview, make sure to touch on some standard project management terminology and talk about your tools, your processes, there are certain key terms. The interviewer is interested in hearing some of those standard project management terms and how you've applied them to your project in real life scenarios. This gives them an understanding of your level of knowledge and application to real life situations. Now, here's a little tip that I've noticed in many of the interviews, that the candidate continues to use the word we when explaining their project and what they did. We did this, we did that. And that's where typically an interviewer might circle back and say, who do you mean by we? Was it your team? What did you do? You want to make sure to get ahead of that. Be very specific about what your contribution to the project has been and what you as a PM have done for the project. So make sure to start your sentences with the I pronoun and be very focused on what exactly you did as the PM. I did this. I contributed to that. I helped facilitate this. I overcame this challenge, etc., etc., etc. And one of the most other common questions they'll be asking you is a scenario-based question. And what that is a hypothetical project scenario with a certain challenge that they would like you as a project manager explain how you would go about solving it. Now, if you're already an experienced project manager, chances are you're familiar with that type of scenario from your past experiences, and you'll be able to use that to answer the question. In either scenario, you want to make sure to remember that your role as a project manager is to be the glue to the team and bring the team together for a common goal to make sure the project is successful. By understanding the role of every project team member, and especially yours, you'll be able to answer any scenario-based question successfully. Now, here's an important tip in answering a question like that. Chances are the challenge that you've been presented to solve has something to do with one of the triple constraints being off track on a project that you need to bring back on track, meaning your schedule, budget, resources, quality, scope. Any one of those might be off track, and you need to use your project management tools and techniques to bring them back on track. Aside from explaining how you're going to do that, you need to make sure that there is a second component to it, and that is communication. You need to remember that 90% of a project manager's role is communication. So make sure that your response has something to do with that you've identified to whom and when and how you're going to communicate. Make sure to know your project management life cycle. You can get those from any project management book that teaches the basic terminology and methodology of project management from start to finish. PMI is a great tool to go to for a standard life cycle that starts with initiation, planning, execution, closing, monitoring, and control. You can tune into my channel. In the future videos, I'll dive into each one of those topics separately. Now, one of the questions that I personally like to ask each candidate when I interview them is, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? I'm always amazed how truthfully and honest candidates answer those questions. Now, personally, I think the most impressive responses to that question are the most authentic ones. Try not to follow the cliche. The interviewers have heard it all. And when you usually look up or research how to answer interview questions, there is a formula people try to put out there that how to spin a negative into a positive. And reality is it's just going to sound like everybody else's. Make sure that you're aware of your true strengths and weaknesses and are honest about it. You obviously want to portray your best qualities, but don't be afraid to talk about the areas that you're working on to improve. Last but not least, one of the other questions that you'll probably be asked about is, where do you see yourself 3 to 5 years from now? The key to answering that question is be prepared. Don't get caught off guard where you're like, I didn't think about it, or I'm just happy doing what I'm doing. Have put some thought into it. They are looking for somebody who wants to grow, who wants to continuously improve. You may be happy being a project manager forever, but be particular in about areas that you like to improve and where you see yourself 3 to 5 years from now that is further than where you are today. And that's really that area that an interviewer is looking for. Be careful about coming across too ambitious when responding to that question. It's one thing to be advanced and skilled and be ready for your next management position that you're coming in. So make sure that experience level that you're coming in is realistic compared to what you're planning to be 3 to 5 years from now. My final advice for a successful interview is be authentic. And remember, attitude always wins over skill. Skill can be learned, but a great attitude wins over any interviewer. So keep that in mind, and best of luck to you. I would love to hear your success story, so leave a comment below and let me know how any of these tips were used in your interview that helped you get the job. If you are interested in hearing more on any topics, leave a comment below and tune into my channel to hear more.